Hi, I'm Helal Lootah. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Lune Technologies, and you're listening to the Purple Podcast.
Hi, welcome today to the Purple Podcast, where we continue our series on talking about failure and specifically innovation failure and why it can be a good thing and a bad thing. I'd like to welcome today to our guest, a very busy guy. He has his own company, Helal Lootah. Thanks for joining us. You're the CEO and co-founder of Lune Technologies. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you very much for the invite.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Now, we normally talk corporate innovation, and you are more at the kind of startup world, or have been for the last few years. Maybe you could just give us a quick update in terms of what it is that you do and what you've been doing with Lune Technologies.
Yeah, so thank you again for having me here today. I found, the topic of this podcast very interesting and definitely a topic that requires a discussion in this region. A little bit about myself. I'm a lawyer by training, studied law in England, qualified in New York. So you might be asking, what are you doing in the tech field? And we started Lune 4 years ago, initially as a B2C mobile application to help digitize what's the concept of social savings. We learned a lot in that experience, and then we pivoted it to a B2C personal finance management app, and then we learned also again quite a lot. And that is when we discovered that there's a bigger problem to be solved, which is the fact that the quality of payment and transaction data in the region is difficult, very difficult and challenging, and is a value inhibitor for financial institutions and banks. So we decided that, again, we pivoted again to B2B, and that was the right call. Today, alhamdulillah, we have, we raised 2 venture capital rounds. We have quite a lot of traction. We're working in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, and we're, quite proud of what we're building and our team. So that's a quick rundown of background about myself.
Very good. Now, if there's one thing I know, is that the road of a startup is not smooth.
No, absolutely.
There are lots of ups and downs. And probably the concept of failure or pivoting or experimentation is a lot more prevalent in the startup world. Would it be fair to say that you've had your fair share of those situations?
So, the topic of failure is very interesting to me because, what is the definition of failure in the first place?
Yeah.
So I thought about it for a bit, and what I've come up with was the fact that failure is not achieving an expectation. Failure is subjective. Whose expectation? It could be your internal expectation. It could be an external expectation. Think about it from this perspective. So when you have it from a subjective perspective, is there even such a thing, such as failure?
Yeah.
Is that even an objective reality in life? That was, I went very philosophical with this.
So failure is always going to be in the eye of the beholder.
Absolutely. So for some people, failure is, inability to achieve, what I wanted to achieve. But in my experience and my humble opinion, failure is, when you give up, basically. And then and there's a difference between giving up and pivoting. I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
That's my subjective opinion of it. Another thing is the fact that failure is actually the largest learning opportunity that you have in your life. And anything, on a personal level, on a corporate level, on your professional level. One of my dear friends, and that told me a few years ago, was like, Helal, there's no regrets. There's always learning opportunities. So this is always a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, when I look at it, everything in life is one of these examples. So that's my humble opinion of what's the definition of failure. So when you come to from an entrepreneurial perspective, what is the subjective definition of failure? There's 3 ways or 3 definitions. One of the things would be that you started with an idea, that idea didn't pan out, you have failed. No, you did not fail. You have
Yep.
learned something, because no one would have told you anything, or how are you supposed to learn otherwise? Failure is when you decide, again, subject based on every person's opinion, is when you stop, completely stop. Pivoting and developing and going forward, that's not stopping. So that's not, in my opinion, doesn't fit within the definition.
Have you always felt like that, or is that something you've learned along the way?
Oh, we learned it along the way. One of the things, here in the region, unfortunately, from a societal perspective, it's like there's always this fear of failure. Always fear of failure. So when I started Lune, I remember I started part-time. I was still working in the Dubai courts. I had a very, set legal career set for me. My colleagues are now judges. Some of them are very successful lawyers. It's a legal field that, it's very, you do this and this and this and this.
It's a very structured path.
And that's what I thought I was going to do all my life. But when I started building this, the initial venture, I could tell, everyone's looking at me. Are you crazy? Like, you have this very good career set up. You've put, you worked hard for this. What are you doing? What do you know about, technology and building a mobile app? Like, you didn't study computer science, or have you developed an app? They wouldn't say this, so I would see it in their eyes. And why is that the case? Because there is an inherent bias towards safety net. There's an inherent bias towards, what if I do not succeed? What if I do this and I fail? And what will people say about me? And I saw that. But I was very lucky, myself and my co-founder. I had a very supportive family, an entrepreneurial family that knew, okay, even, the worst comes to worst, this is an experience you learn hugely. So in the first 6 months, I learned more than 4 years in the job, the Dubai courts. The exposure, the experiences, the tough situations, you learn a lot in general, not just in terms of skills, but about yourself. About your character, things you never knew about yourself. So it's the most, you learn the most in this experience, or in the entrepreneurial field. So on the topic, so that was an example of there's a fear of failure in society. There's very few people who will take that step, and like disregard that. It's not easy to disregard
it's a risk.
Fear of it. Absolutely. It's very, very difficult. And then, a year into our business, you're like, okay, things are not looking very good. Maybe maybe there was a point there, or like those individuals had a point in what they told us. So you really get to question yourself. You think about a lot of these things. It's a huge topic. A lot of things come out of it.
It's a windy road. Have you got any specific examples that you can share?
When we built our first app, it came, first of all, we didn't have any experience in entrepreneurship. Our families were all traditional business. My family is traditional business, government. My co-founder is in the corporate, his family is in the corporate world. So even when we started, they're like, Helal, do any traditional business, you have 100 people like supporting you, telling you their experiences, etc. You're doing something none of us know, or like none of us have done before. And in our network, especially within the Emirati society, not a lot of people have ventured into technology. So I didn't find that support network. So we built an app based out of an assumption that we didn't validate, which is the fact that we saw that there's a lot of people doing or engaging in what's called social savings, which is basically when you, myself, a couple of other people come together, pool in our money on a monthly basis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept. And then every month someone will take the pool. And that's basically a savings mechanism, informal savings mechanism. And when we looked into it, we realized that the majority of people in the UAE were engaging in this. And different nationalities, not just Emiratis, Arabs, Asians, all sorts of nationalities were engaging in it. And we saw a gap because this was informal. We thought we'll digitize it. That will solve a lot of the problems. I used to get, in that specific period, I got like 3 cases in the courts based on this, because they're like, someone would just take the money and leave. And then you have no evidence. I started thinking, okay, if we digitize this platform and you'll have evidence, it will be more, you can control it, etc. All this informal exchange of money now will be a little bit formal. And we set on about doing that. And we quit our jobs based on this business model, invested a lot of our money. And then we realized that the regulator didn't let us build what we wanted to build because it's a very, there's a lot of moving parts and they're not too comfortable about, okay, you're going to hold other people's money. This is very complicated.
Yeah.
There's no clear regulation for this. And then, so we ended up with a skeleton of what we wanted to build. And we're like, okay, now what? After a year, like we spent all our money. We're not going to go back to our corporate jobs. Like something internally didn't click. Like I cannot go back.
Yeah.
That's when, we had I allocate all of this to, we say it, faith or God's supervision and God's support and all of this. He has directed us in all of these ways. Different people have different perspective, but this is both my co-founder and I's perspective on this. Because when you look at the experiences that we went through, like how did we end up here? Not, nothing other than divine intervention, So at that moment, we got we're speaking with some of our customers, our early customers, like, guys, we're sitting here with an app. I have like 2 people on payroll. Like, I don't want to, they're reliant on us.
Yeah.
We don't have any investors. Investors are not going to invest in this model. We had no idea how to raise money. We had no idea how to deal with investors. So what do you guys think we should do with the app? And these are our early customers. Like, Helal, the app is fantastic for people who engage in the social savings. However, I don't even know where my money is going.
Yeah.
Just give me an app that tells me where my money is going. That's a good first step. So like, okay, we have like 2 months runway. Just give it a shot instead of, just shutting it down. And we did that. And we basically changed the app, kept the name, kept everything, just changed the app into a personal finance management app, launched it. And then again, other regulatory hurdles, infrastructure problems. And that was actually where we discovered the problem we're solving today, which is that we are pulling payment data from open banking sources. And the quality was so bad, we couldn't use it. Our app would not work. It became a manual app. We're like, okay, this defeats the purpose. What's going on? They're like, okay, I'm sure there's someone solving this problem somewhere. So we looked at in the region, in the UAE, no one's solving it. In the region, no one's solving it. The fintech ecosystem is growing and everyone's going to face this problem, but no one's solving it. We find a company in Europe. They're like, guys, we speak to them. They're like, guys, yes, we build this for Europe, but the qualities of data, the inputs are very different from yours. We have postcode, we have proper names.
Yeah.
Like, they saw our data and they're like, we can't work with this. Like, we're just very transparent. And we're like, okay, if no one's gonna solve this, the traditional, or other vendors, international vendors are not gonna solve it for the region. We're gonna solve it. So that's when we pivoted again to B2B. And that's when, after a year or a year and a half of learning, that in this region, running a B2C proposition is very difficult.
Yeah.
Especially in the fintech field, especially as a regulator, in the regulatory, if you get regulated. So a lot of those learnings came from those first 2 experiences, from those, what you would perceive as, not a successful business model.
Exactly. So you started with one objective based on an insight, needed to pivot based on that, based on customer feedback, needed to pivot on that again based on regulations and realization that the data wasn't there.
Yeah, even from a business model, a B2B business model is way more lucrative than a B2C business model. Yes, it's a long sales cycle, but it's, from B2C, it's a volume game. You don't necessarily have this in the region here.
Yeah.
So this is, a lot of, specific nuances to the region that you have to take into consideration.
As a CEO, let's say that your first idea worked and what you envisaged for the platform. Do you think that you would be as good a CEO now if that worked straight away without the failure?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, like, I believe, in an entrepreneurial journey, like, there is no way you're not gonna, like, there's no entrepreneurial journey where there's no challenges.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. But, if everything was smooth sailing, then your assumptions about yourself, about your how to run a business will all stay intact.
Yeah.
So you will not learn anything. So what's the point, you know?
I think the biggest difference that I see from the startup and the entrepreneurial side of the world to the corporate and corporate innovation side of the world is that acceptance of that risk and the fact that you are going to potentially have to fail in what you initially envisaged and pivot. But it's kind of turning that as looking at it as a new opportunity, right? Rather than actually, as you say, just leaving it and walking away from it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I've worked in the government. I've interacted with the corporate world.
Yeah.
I work with banks today, so I know how they operate internally. And honestly, the biggest impediment for innovation within the corporate world is one word: fear.
Yeah.
Fear. You know, you're an employee, or even if you're a manager, even if you're a CEO, you're employed by someone else, and you always have this fear that whatever you will do, or like if you make a mistake, then that's your basically livelihood, you know.
Yeah.
Now, this is the biggest impediment. Now, the leaders who want to, push their corporate, entities beyond mediocrity and beyond what's normal need to change this perspective.
Yeah.
There should not be any fear by your employees or team members or C-suite. They should be able to take that step. Again, under supervision, not too much.
It's a really big concept, though.
Yeah. You should allow that for that in a contained level.
Yeah.
I'm not saying just do it, just
just let them loose.
But I think that's the biggest impediment, honestly.
Yeah. So if I was to turn around to you and you're still a lawyer working in the courts, and you could impart kind of 3 pieces of knowledge to yourself back in those days before you embarked on this journey, and kind of encountered that need to fail and pivot and try something else. What would those 3 kind of things that you could say to yourself be?
Honestly, like it's 3 things. Just don't plan too much. Secondly, just accept God's direction, because I'm not here just because out of my own willingness. God put me here.
Right.
He put me through all of these experiences. That you think about it, like, what's this guy? A lawyer? What was he doing building a tech company and ending up with all of these? It doesn't make any sense, That's the only justification to it. So the faster you accept these things, the easier, not easier, but the more comfortable you are in whatever comes your way. I used to have a very rigid plan in university and after university. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to qualify in New York. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to end up with this.
Yeah.
At some point in my job, in the courts, I realized that the end goal wasn't sufficient for me, because I put all of these steps, but then the end didn't look that lucrative. Even if I created a law firm, that's one of the biggest, became the biggest regional law firm after 25 years of work. It just wasn't enough for me. So that's when I realized, okay, all of this planning that I spent, now, God, I planned all of this, but God sent me in a different way. So what's going on? So just accept it,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically a couple of things I would tell myself.
Tap into your more creative side probably as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Okay. Helal, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I know you're very busy, so appreciate you coming down and spending some time talking to us about your experiences.
It's a pleasure.
I love the concepts, and I get inspired when I speak to entrepreneurs, because that risk appetite and that fear of failure is so much more accepted on the startup side than the corporate side. And I think the corporate side has a lot to learn. So.
Inshallah, it will move towards the corporate. We'll see a lot of more innovation in the corporate side soon in Dubai.
Hopefully. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Neil.